Nigerians encourage corruption, cites University of the Punch newspaper.
David Mark says news be a dirt.
America's Nigerian Governors Forum calls for Okonjo Iweala's
Man
resignation.
says new PDP.
Page 2 of the Punch newspaper.
The Dailies, every day on Core TV News.
Welcome back. I'm afraid I got caught up there. Now, let's kickstart on Core Digest today with the dailies. Top stories making headlines on some of Nigerian newspapers. I have The Nation, The Vanguard, The Punch, as well as The Guardian newspaper for review. And I already have with me here in our live studios in Lagos, a legal practitioner, UFI OZONO. Good morning, and thank you for finding time to join us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's kickstart with The Nation newspaper. Of course, you expect to hear much about Tambuwal on most of the papers today. The Nation says outrage as police strip Tambuwal of security. Lawyers, others blast Jonathan. And you get some extracts here from certain individuals. APC saying, under President Jonathan, we now have a police force that is monitoring and making conclusions with respect to party membership. This is unheard of in any decent democracy, says the APC, right there on the front page of the Nation newspaper. The police is the collective property of all Nigerians. Politicians should stop making a fool of themselves. Police protection should be restored to him, says Daudu. And Ngige here saying that the IGP is not a court of law. I doubt whether sound legal advice from the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation was sought by the IGP before this malicious action was taken. Of course, the police also saying we followed Section 68, subsection 1G of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You're in contempt of the courts. That's what Tambuwal is saying. And to other stories on the front page of The Nation, Mibiko Ondo PDP crisis deepens. Sacked ESCO rejects governor. Jonathan Kwankwaso pig farms. Court lifts order on NFF board and on business pension funds hit 4.5 trillion naira. All right, Ufi, let's start with all of this. Would you say that indeed what the police did yesterday by withdrawing the security details of the Speaker of the House is in contempt of the courts?
Well, it hasn't. I don't think it has gone to court yet. The main issue now is the contestation of whether he remains a valid member of the House by reason of the provisions of the Constitution or no. Now, that will be subject to the interpretation of the courts. But in the meanwhile, what does the Constitution provide for? We are looking at what he has done and what the police has done on the one hand and on the other. Now, the Constitution clearly provides in Section 68, sub 1, sub G, that if a person has been sponsored to become for the post in any of the national legislature, let's say the Senate and also the House of Reps, and it happens that while the tenure is still ongoing, it decamps from the party that sponsors it to another party, then that person shall vacate his seat. The word vacate is what we must pay attention to, and also the word shall. In law, the word shall is mandatory.
Okay.
Vacate means to voluntarily withdraw yourself from the House. So it is incumbent on him. There's no part of that provision that says, then it shall be deemed that he has abandoned his position, and that should the court declare his seat to be vacant, then it shall be vacant. The provision says that then he shall vacate his position, leave the House completely. The only exception that you have is if the party he was in fragmented, then you had factions, and it belongs to one of the factions. Then that faction merges with another faction.
But before we get to the details of that, does it behove on the Nigerian police to execute that particular portion of the Constitution by withdrawing its orderlies?
It is arguable Aminu Tambuwal can go to court and contest it, but I doubt if he will succeed because that provision is very, very open for the police to exploit, which the police did right now.
But I also understand, because in the short while, we'll also do some in-depth analysis on that portion of the Constitution. I also understand that it was clearly stated there whose responsibility would be to take away such member of the House who is found culpable, being the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Reps. It did not in any way mention the Nigerian police.
It didn't mention the Nigerian police, but you see, if you are doing an act which is an illegal act, the police has a duty to respond.
Okay.
You don't need the police to say, okay, I was, like in America, for instance, there's a level to which you discipline your child and the child can call the police for you. Now, there's no provision that says call the police in reality, but if the child feels that it's been maltreated, the child can call the police.
Okay.
That's the same thing here. Now, the police feels that Aminu Tambuwal does not have any legal basis to be in the house anymore. So it does not owe Aminu Tambuwal a duty to continue to provide him security detail. So they withdrew the amendment.
Well, as it is now, who is the Speaker of the House of Reps?
As it stands now, by what he has done, by declaring that he is no longer in the PDP that sponsored him, and the Constitution said he shall vacate, and he has refused to vacate, it is taken that he wants to eat his cake. He wants to eat his cake and also have it, which is not possible.
There are clauses that you made mention earlier. If there are divisions, if there are factions.
Okay.
Now, Tambuwal is of the opinion that a court of competent jurisdiction has already confirmed that the PDP has been factionalized. So if one would expect that this particular portion of the Constitution should solely be the function of the judiciary to interpret before there is an execution, bearing in mind that certain members of the same house have defected from the PDP to the APC, and they are still sitting and still called House of Reps, and I'm not sure that their orderlies have been withdrawn yet. How do we justify all of this?
Okay, what I see here, this is a test case, and it's anchored on a moral question. If Aminu Tambuwal has gone to court to empower him to do what he has done, it's a different thing. But when you take away the basis of where you will have drawn your legal power from, and then you approach the court will say, sorry, I can't help you. It's subject to argument, actually, and he has a right to go to court to contest why his orderly, or sorry, why his security detail have been removed from him.
You think that the Nigerian police was not in a haste to have taken that decision?
Well, I would like you to know that most of the Nigerian police officers are actually lawyers. So they also read this Constitution and they interpret it to the best of their ability. So they know when they are doing something that is legal. They know when they are doing it. Now the Constitution, like I said, that particular provision, that subsection G of Section 1 of Section 68, just says that if the person leaves the party that sponsored him, jump ship into another party, and then while still the tenure is still running, then he shall vacate his seat because it is deemed that it no longer has a basis to be in the house.
Okay.
Simple. So what else do you want us to say about that? Shall vacate. These words are very powerful.
You're saying categorically now that as it is now, Nigeria doesn't have a Speaker of the House of Reps?
Well, as it is now, I think it behoves on the members of the House to rise up and then get themselves a Speaker, because this man has declared and has violated the same Constitution he swore to uphold. Okay. If you read that section, if we had the Constitution here, if you read the section, it's very, very clear. No ambiguity whatsoever. So you had different grounds by which a person could lose his seat while there. And this one is just a clear provision to it. If you meet the court will interpret that section just the way it is.
But then my own concern, personal concern though, is what rights do members of the House who have already defected now have that the Speaker doesn't have?
Well, like I said, moral questions. You know, they are politicians. They know what they are doing up there. We are here trying to analyze what they are doing up there.
Because you said earlier that almost every member of the police is a legal practitioner or something?
No, most members,
of them
at least the ones
have
I've come
legal
across.
background.
Yes.
Tambuwa also has a legal background.
Yes.
So would you think that as a lawyer that he is and a lawmaker, he could have taken certain steps and intentionally violate the law if it doesn't have certain provisions of that constitution also working for him?
Yes, lawyers are human beings. Lawyers could be outraged. Lawyers could make decisions. Some of the decisions might be wrong. Like if you want to form partnership, you enter into a partnership with somebody you shouldn't have. It's a decision, and it could cost you. It's the same thing in political terrain. The exchanges and intrigues and all of that, power play. It gets to a point, a heated point, where somebody decides that I've had enough, I want to leave, or probably my interests are not best protected here. I want to get to a greener pasture, and then it takes the leap in the dark, like he has done.
Let's quickly, just before we go on, let's find out what the top stories are on other papers this morning. On the front page of the Vanguard, we have terrorists overrun CDS, Badi's hometown. And the writers here, how we escaped Mubi, says redeemed pastor. We have having humanitarian challenges, says NEMA. And we must bring it to a stop before April. If we do our work cohesively, I can tell you, General Minima, you will finish your work in no time. I can say confidently that this war is already won. And of course, that's Air Marshal Alex Badi, Chief of Defense Staff, on January 20, 2014, where he was saying that before the end of April, that all of these probably would have been put to end. But this is October, and we're still counting. So other stories here, I don't know where my father, stepmother, 7 siblings are. That's not me. It's a victim talking passionately on pages 50 and 51. You want to find out details of that story. Lagos CP Aderanti visits Vanguard. That's on pages 6 and 10. Jonathan Peake's nomination forms on page 8 of the Vanguard. And defection presidency moves against Tambuwa. IGP withdraws his security aids. That's on page 9. And synagogue collapsed building had no approval. Lagos government. That's on page 10 of the Vanguard. Let me quickly take you up on that. If a building has no approval and eventually collapsed and people died, what are the provisions of the law in this regard? Are we looking at a situation where the person who owns this building will have to come to answer and probably serve some jail terms?
You have about 3 scenarios here. You want to build a house, you have to get approval from government. That means the government has to be aware that you are doing something of the sort. And then whether the place is planned for government acquisition or for government use over a period of time. And also you also have this town planning arrangement where the government can look at, okay, where do we want to situate residential building, where do we want to put industries and all of those kind of things. Now, when you take it for government approval, government has to be sure before they give you the approval. Also, the architectural designs, whatever the the engineering, what it will take. So government will look at everything together because of the lives of the people who will be there. Now, if you do not get approval and then you get into a situation like this, it will show that the building from the beginning up to when it was concluded was not, they didn't have government approval. That's a big problem for you, you know. All of the town planning acts.
Take responsibility for what happens.
Take responsibility, whether it's engineering defect, whether it's architectural defect, whatever it is. And the engineers are going to get into big problems too.
So on the back page of the Vanguard for some sports stories now, we don't want Keshi. Fans react. That's on page 60. Which of the fans actually? Because I've always been a fan of Keshi. So maybe we should go for a referendum this time. And to other stories, President Jonathan recalls Keshi. Nigeria escapes FIFA ban as court dismisses case against NFF. Eagles, Black Stars to clash in Uyo, Pele billed to attend. Is it not an anathema that FIFA threatens to ban Nigeria because of government interference? And then we have President Jonathan waving in, speaking to Chris Giwa, and then he withdraws his case from court. And also, Mr. President reinstating the big boss, Stephen Keshi. Is a situation where government intervention has cancelled government intervention and then Nigeria is totally free?
Well, I think it's all about the intrigues you have even in the sports. Wherever you see offices and people occupying those offices, you always see politics. And when you see politics, you are going to find intrigues and all of that. So even in the sporting world, it's always like that. The question is, if Nigeria has to fund the NFF to that extent, they should also have a controlling hand in how the affairs goes, especially when it comes to management of finances, how those monies were disbursed and all of that. So I think government coming in to a point, I will not say the President Jonathan now, it just might be government that felt Keshi should just continue what he has started. You understand? So every other thing is politics. Now you talk about FIFA.
But can that also be termed as government directly interfering in the affairs of football?
Government is not interfering to an extent because FIFA knew Keshi was there. The only thing FIFA was concerned about is taking sports to the regular courts. It should have gone to the arbitration for sports. Okay. You understand? Then from there, you move on the appeal. All of them when it comes to sports. But the problem with Nigeria is that we've not domiciled such laws in Nigeria. So everything normally goes to the regular court. And that's what FIFA is trying to say. Take it to the sports court. But you see, the problem, the thing with Nigerian court is that the Nigerian court has so much jurisdiction. The High Court, the Federal High Court. So those courts can actually interfere or look at those matters, especially the issues that come before it. The issues may not just be sports. It may just be whether this man was supposed to stand for election. And also, they'll be canvassing that issue. Once you get to that route and say it wasn't supposed to contest, everything goes off the window. So lawyers know how to coin. So
let's move away from the Vanguard to the Punch. And top stories making headlines on the front page of the Punch newspaper today. Jonathan, PDP planned shocker for Tambuwal. And there are writers here. Speaker may be barred from National Assembly. PDP reps to defy Speaker on resumption. And Tambuwal kicks as police withdraw security aids. You get details of all of that on page 2 of the Punch. APC leaders are aware Amosun prosecuted me, Ogun Deputy Governor, after publishing about 10-page letter. Is still speaking tough on the newspapers. You get details of that on page 3. PDP governors get automatic ticket as Jonathan picks form. That's on page 3 of the Punch. Federal government to arraign NBC Coca-Cola MDs on November 4. I go to beer parlor every Friday. That's the Ekiti State Governor, Ayodele Fauci, on page 9. Well, that doesn't surprise me because he's always said he drinks agbojedi and all of that with his people. Lasif, father of dog bite boy trade blame. That's on pages 4 and 5. And Jonathan returns Keshi as Super Eagles coach, page 61. I still really find it hard to believe that Mr. President returning a Super Eagles coach is not direct interference into the Nigerian football, exactly what FIFA wouldn't want. But don't let us go there now. Let's talk about this Tambuwal issue for a while. Would you agree that that part of the Constitution has some ambiguity attached to it?
No, I have read the provisions. Very clear. Very, very clear. You can't shoot yourself in the foot.
But can you confirm if the PDP has been factionalized or if it is being troubled at this time?
The PDP right now is not factionalized. In fact, when it was factionalized was when Atiku and the rest were there, when you had new PDP and then you had the other PDP. And then they brought in, I think, Ayola to be the factional head.
Are you aware that the elder statesman, Tony Anini, has been on a peace tour of northern Nigeria? He's been to Kaduna, he's been to Sokoto, talking to PDP leaders and telling them why it is important for them to come together, embrace unity and peace. How do you describe that?
Well, now this is how it goes. If you have such a scenario, and we assume here that the PDP is factionalized, and Tambuwal was in the other party, the other faction, for him to have legitimacy to have done what he has done, it has to, that faction has to move over to a new party and be acquired by that new party.
Okay.
And that information is communicated to INEC. You understand? The INEC now is aware and has issued a certificate to consummate that merger. Once that has been done, then it will have that audacity to have said, well, sorry, I'm now in APC by reason of the fact that I'm in this faction that has moved over to the APC.
You're saying it should
But
have
that has
settled
not
that
happened.
before that?
It should have been settled. Now it was not done. So it's assumed that the PDP is one. And then he had no basis to have done what he did. And so because of that, the police took advantage of that.
It's all right. Let's quickly move away from there to a point of call on the dailies this morning. The Guardian newspaper. Police withdraw Tambuwal security detail over defection. APC, rights groups, others condemn action. And Speaker may engage private guards. Boko Haram takes over Adamawa town, turns Emir's palace to headquarters. That's on page 3. Judge decries delay in hearing governor's suit on defection. Page 5. Glow named among top 10 most respected companies. That's on page 66. And it's day 200. Break back Argos. Nigerians operate 17.18 million bank accounts. Transactions on ATM terminals hit 2 trillion naira by July. CBN tasks consumers on cards protection. And Jonathan collects PDP presidential nomination form is another story you will find on the news notes right on the front page of The Guardian. And collapsed synagogue building not approved. Kwankwaso picks nomination form for presidency. Now, back to the Tambuwal security detail remover. Some have also questioned what happened to the Ondo State governor who decamped from the Labour Party, I believe, to the PDP. And several others. You recall what happened at the house, at the Edo State House of Assembly, where about 5 APC members also decamped to the PDP. Of course, their house declared their seat vacant. They went to court. As we speak right now, there are 2 different houses of assembly in Edo State. But one thing I'm sure of is that the police did not withdraw their own details. I mean, many have already started talking about possibly a partisan disposition of the Nigerian police here, because what is good for the goose, they say is good for the gander.
Yes, but you also recall that 2 people might commit a crime and government goes after one. The other one is not touched. It had nothing to do with, it's just like 2 people decide to go and rob, and then they just caught 2 of them, and one ran away. This other one knows the information of the other one, and they prosecute this man. This man said, no, I'm not the only one. There are other people. There are many thieves. Why only me? Some of the times you use a test case to show that this thing is real. And then when other people see that this is real, they will fall into place. Either they will amend their steps or whatever. And sometimes they don't have all of the resources to go pack everybody at once. But if you can show a good example, it will serve for the rest.
Well, in
but this Tambuwal's case, I will not say, once you follow the processes, once you declare that the seat is vacant by virtue of the fact that you have decamped or you have left the place or you should leave and the people refuse to leave, then you do what is appropriate. Either you go to court to get them removed, and if the Constitution permits you to use the police, or the police should step in and tell them, look, you have no basis to be here because the Constitution says from this point on, you are no longer here. So please, take your person away from here and your personal effects.
I'm referring particularly to the role of the police in this. Yes. In Edo State, the Enahoro's complex, where the legislator's seat, as we speak now, is even guarded by the Nigerian police. And these are legislators that decamped from the APC to the PDP. I mean, it's the same Nigerian police. It's not American police. So why would the police decide otherwise in the case of Edo State House of Assembly? And then we see a totally different disposition at the floor of the House of Reps.
It's an irony, really, if you want to say so. But looking at it, I don't have, it's not to my own knowledge. It might be reported in the press, but I'm not so sure of it because I'm not a witness.
Okay.
I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, but I just read it. So I don't know the credibility of that information. But let's assume that it's for real. You see, the problem might be the issues surrounding it. The other problem might be politics. But some of the times, Okay, for instance, let's look at it. I think I listened to the chairman of the APC, national chairman, talking about the Atiku's case. And he was saying that, look, anybody could decamp, that the law is very clear. And I said, wait a minute. Now, it's not, that Atiku's case was a different issue. The Atiku's case, it was the INEC that stopped him from taking those forms and from proceeding with his presidential ambition. You understand? After he had decamped. It was not the party that was, it was INEC. So the issue was between INEC and whether INEC could or had the power to do what it did. So, you know, people have a way of mixing up the issues. But if we have to keep them apart, we will see that the police will only have a business from the point on where a person is doing an illegal act. But from the point that is okay up until that point, the police has no business. Okay. You understand? It's just like saying nobody should do drugs, nobody should carry drugs. From the point that you are clean, no problem. But from the point you touch the drug, the police can pick you up at any time. They can incarcerate you, take you to the courts and all of that, and have you imprisoned. From this point on, you were free. But from this point, the illegality started. You know, you are under the custody of the police, or the watch of the police, let me use the words. So they feel that at the point at which Tambuwal does no longer enjoy that legal status in the house, that they can come in for him. And it should have been the case all through. So if there are preferential treatment, I don't understand why that is so.
It's all right. Let's quickly just find out what the top sports stories are on the Guardian newspaper. Nigeria escapes FIFA ban. Good news for the football-loving nation. As also, there is a recall for Stephen Keshi. Amoju seeks Keshi's return, and Pinnick praises Jonathan for fatherly role. Triathlon tournament begins in Lagos, and all other stories if you care to check. OZONO, thank you very much for analyzing the dailies with us today on Core TV News.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, I'll be bringing you in-depth analysis on the Tambuwal's defection and matters arising. Don't go away.